Right, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for coming. Your patience may well be tested to the limit over the next few minutes. I'm not a professional speaker, I'm not a professional actor. I just enjoy working in the theatre. And I'd like to talk to you today about how I prepare myself for a role in a particular play. The real reason I'm here today is because, like most fathers, I find it extremely difficult to say no to my children's requests. So when my daughter Catherine said to me, "Will you do this?" I said yes. Of course, most of those things are sort of gardening, babysitting, doing a bit of decorating. It's not a problem. But she said, "I want you to talk to people about how you prepare for acting." And that's the point at which I started to panic. I didn't know anything about TED. So I looked it up on the internet, and that made things worse. Here you've got lots and lots of professional speakers. You've already heard from two very, very inspirational people. She said that the subject we'd be talking about would be research. Now, the first thing I think of when someone says to me research, I think of someone like the doctor here, who sort of studies graphs and people and looks through microscopes, and about Tom and his brother who research the internet, do all kinds of things like that. And I thought, well, I actually don't do any research. And I thought, yes, actually you do. My research is to read the script. I look at the script. What's the author trying to say to me? And even more importantly than reading the script, I like to speak the words out loud and listen to them and try and hear what I'm trying to say to us. I know from reading other actors' biographies, I have read one or two, in fact Catherine gave me a couple when I talked to her about acting, that some actors go into intense depths. They sort of study the characters concerned, they watch film, they watch theatre, they'll do all kinds of things. As I said before, what I do is read the script. I distinctly do not want to see anyone else's performance before I go on stage. Afterwards, that's fine. Once I've got the character in my head, that's okay. But before then, it's about reading the script. What I've got here for you today is a short piece, and it is only a short piece. The monologue itself lasts 40 minutes, and by then you definitely would be asleep, and the good doctor would probably be waking you up. But it's a short piece of a script of one of Alan Bennett's monologues, A Chip in the Sugar. Now, I don't know if any of you are familiar. Does anybody know Alan Bennett's work and are familiar with A Chip in the Sugar? Fine. It's basically, a man having a chat with, or sort of unloading his thoughts of what's happened during the course of the day. If you think about it logically, this playwright has said in the script there is everything you need to know about the character. Having had a quick look at the character Graham in the piece here, there are some questions there that I'd like to sort of go through with you if I can. But just to give you a quick taste of how I see Graham. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but we'll just start up here. And I want you to think about Graham, about his life, about what he's saying to you, about the atmosphere in which he is. What's the room like? Where's he making this statement from? I'd just taken a tea up this morning when she said, "Graham, I think the world of you." I said, "I think the world of you." And she said, "That's all right then." I said, "What's brought all this on?" She said, "Nothing. This tea looks strong, pull the curtains." Of course I knew what had brought it on. She said, "I wouldn't want you to think that you're not number one." So I said, "Well, you're number one with me too. Give me your teeth, I'll swill them." If we just listen to that conversation for a few minutes, does anybody have any idea about the relationship between the two people, perhaps? Is this Graham's wife, his sister, his daughter, his mother?
Mother and son.
What do we think? Mother and son, yeah, absolutely. It's a close relationship, obviously, because how many of us have swilled our mother's teeth out first thing in the morning? But probably most of you are too young to have been in that situation, but I have myself, so I have an idea of what's going on here. He goes on to say about what had happened during the course of that day. And he says, what it was, we'd had a bit of excitement yesterday. We ran into a bit of mother's past. I said to her, I didn't know you had a past. I thought I was your past. This is establishing again the relationship between the mother and the son. A very close, intense relationship. We can probably gather from the fact that they actually lived together. He's his mum's carer, probably. And from that we can gather something about his age. Later on in the play, his mother refers to Filey in 1936 when he meets another gentleman from her past. This play was written in the 80s, so that would put her age at about 70. So that gives us a clue to Graham's age. He's probably in his late 40s. There's no, if we look at the script here, there's no sort of reference to any other person at all living in the house. He refers to Dad later, but that's in the past. So there's no male sort of figure in the family there. It's mum and son. He tells us about what they've done that day, and it implies that there's a routine here. This is what they normally do. I'd parked her by the War Memorial on the usual seat, so obviously this is something that they do quite often. And I went and got some reading matter. Now, there is a clue here if we look very closely. He doesn't say I went and bought the newspaper or I went and bought the TV Times. He went and bought some reading matter. Doesn't tell you what the reading matter is. That comes out later in the play. But it's giving us a clue about him. Then I waited while she went and spent a penny in the disabled toilet. She's not actually disabled. Her memory's bad. So basically, there's physically nothing wrong with her mum. His mum, apart from the fact the memory's beginning to go. He then goes on to talk about his mother in general terms, about her education. And from this, we can probably gather something about his education. Does anybody have any ideas about perhaps how Graham had been educated? He says, the thing about Mum is, though she's never had a proper education, she's picked up enough from me to be able to hold her own in discussion about up-to-the-minute issues like the environment and the colour problem. Does this say anything about his education, for instance? Do we think he's a university graduate? Do we?
Well, it says liberal slant and shall look at my Guardian, so I mean the very mention of the word Guardian newspaper gives you an idea that he's probably at least college or university.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I see Graham personally as a bright boy, probably did very well at school. In those days, passed the 11 plus, went to grammar school perhaps, did his A-levels, if we did A-levels in those days, I can't remember. And probably got a place at university. Whether he went to university or not, we can sort of discuss that. I have a feeling that probably he went, but very, very soon after getting there, something happened and he came home. And again, there are sort of clues throughout the play in what happened there. You're right about the reference to the Guardian. That would indicate perhaps a liberal political point of view, perhaps. Likes to be thought of as serious. Thinks he is sufficiently educated to be able to educate his mother. So probably sees himself as a middle-class, intellectual guy, living in a working-class family, and trying to sort of bring his mother up to his level, if you like. He has a level of understanding there.
He talks about the colour problem, doesn't he?
Yes. Well, you must remember this was written in the 80s. We're now 30 years on, that was something that was talked about. It was the colour problem. There was a problem there. And he has a view about economics and all the rest of it. Then this gentleman called Mr. Turnbull arrives, who's obviously had some kind of relationship with his mother many, many years ago, Filey in 1936, Seacrest Hotel. no sand in the bedrooms. That indicates a relationship of some sort, which is a huge shock to Graham, because the only man, as far as he's concerned, who's had a relationship with his mother was his dad. And as he goes on to say, not in this part, mother is mother. She was always mother. To his father, it was mother. As he goes on to say in the play, Frank Turnbull calls her Vera. He said, nobody calls her Vera. My dad never called her Vera. Only once when they were wheeling him into the operating theatre, where presumably he died. Is his mother. He doesn't think of her as a sexual person, of having any kind of relationship whatsoever. Although, of course, since he's here, they must have had sex at least once. But Frank Turnbull now has turned up on the scene, who's had some kind of relationship with his mother. And again, this is not implied in any way in the script, but I sort of like to think that maybe that starts him thinking about Frank. You know, did Mum have a relationship with Frank? Am I Frank's son? Perhaps he could even be, you know, illegitimate. Perhaps his mother married his dad slightly later. He was born perhaps just before the war, and it was never discussed. So there's an interesting sort of aspect there. But all this is sort of giving us an idea about Graham. Age, mid to late 40s perhaps. Marital status, obviously not married. Not in any kind of relationship. You can imply no relationship with anybody, certainly from the piece of the script that you've got there. And in fact, even later on, there's no indication of any kind of relationship with anybody. He meets other people, but they are either beneath him or he looks up to them or whatever. There's no intimate kind of relationship. Educationally, middle class, perhaps went to grammar school, maybe to university. Religion. Can't really find out a lot from there, though at one point later in the play, the vicar calls and has a conversation with them. And his mother says, I always think Graham would have been a good parson, apart from the fact that he doesn't believe in God. And the vicar turns around and says, well, that's not necessarily a disqualification in these times. So I would say that he's probably agnostic. Political persuasion, middle of the road, maybe a liberal, certainly has liberal views, and becomes very, very upset when Frank Turnbull starts to talk about the problems in the economy being due to the blacks and all the rest of it. Then his mother then comes back in and starts talking about, yeah, we have got a problem. I mean, the people in the local newsagent, they have mangoes on the counter. This was in 1980. And the other day I picked up my woman's own and it smelled of curry. So there's that kind of, and he's absolutely appalled because he's taught his mother to be liberal and understand that that's not a problem. But Mum's going away from him. This kind of thing then upsets Frank. He sees Frank Turnbull ousting him, basically, which is what eventually happens, or tries to happen. He needs things to be the way they are. His mum's looking to change things. So there's obviously a problem there from the very beginning. So it's about trying to sort of put yourself into Graham's shoes, in fact. Again, I think that he sees himself as middle class, educated. His mum's a working class woman. The area they live in is probably a working class area. He feels he should be able to sort of be better than that. In terms of a job or career, very little said about that there, although he does make the point that this lady called Joy Buckle at his day centre. What do we get from that, do you think, from his day centre? Does he run the day centre? Does he work at the day centre? Is he actually a patient at the day centre? All those are possibilities that are revealed during the course of the play. In fact, it turns out he is a patient at the day centre and he has a mild mental health issues. The author also intimates that he has homosexual tendencies. We talked about the reading matter at the beginning of the play, and that's developed during the course of the play. There's a conversation between him and his mother about, I know what kind of things you read, those things you've got on top of the wardrobe. And he says, yes, it's about chess. And she says, chess, chess, men with no clothes on. So there's obviously, but I believe probably that he's never had a sexual experience of any kind, or perhaps he's had one and it frightened him so much that he just doesn't want to admit his own sexuality. So a very complex character here. But most of this you could probably get from 2 or 3 pages of script. So if you were actually putting on this performance, that's how I see Graham being sort of as a character. In terms of staging, how would you sort of stage it? It's a monologue, so it's basically one person talking to him. So the chances are he's going to be sitting down. He'll be sitting down perhaps in a cosy armchair. I set it, maybe sat down, copy of The Guardian on his knee, one small table, sort of standard lamp behind him, putting a pool of light over him, glass of dry sherry by his right hand on the table there, because at one point that's how Mum says to him, he's very refined, he likes a glass of dry sherry. That's the sort of image that we have of it. We have in fact got a slide here of Graham, and I don't know, do I have to press something or sorry? As you've probably gathered, I'm a bit of a technophobe. I don't know anything about computers or anything like that, but these are 2 slides of an impression of Graham. It was a production that was put on by a Scottish theatre company, if we ever get there. Anyway, here he is. This isn't exactly as I see it. I mean, he's got a nice cardigan on there. I see him personally in a button-up cardigan. I don't know if those older people might remember, they used to have like leather buttons on them, like little half footballs, like a leather case. And perhaps a cream shirt with a bit of a brown check in it. But the brown trousers is the other side on that. The other one, it shows, she refers to his grey socks and sandals. So his trousers would be at half-mast and he'd have his grey socks and sandals on. He's been dressed by his mother basically since he was a little boy, and he's never grown up since then. So that's how I would see Graham, and that's how we would present him. He's very forthright, very sort of, not a very nice person really, I suppose. But the play goes on, and Mum's relationship with Mr. Turnbull develops. He feels more threatened. He starts to hear voices, thinks people are knocking on the door. This links back into then his mental illness. He thinks he's having a relapse. In fact, he isn't. There is somebody watching the house. It's Mr. Turnbull's daughter, because Mr. Turnbull's married and his wife's sitting at home in his nice bungalow while he's courting his mum. And of course, at the end, Graham confronts his mum with this information, destroys her life completely, because she was going to run away with Mr. Turnbull. And then the status quo is resolved. I mean, at the end, what he says is, she put her arm through mine and we went back to the cafe where we used to go for our sort of Sunday afternoon tea. So basically, although he's destroyed some of his mum's hopes and things, he's now back, he's number one. He's sort of running the family. He's the sort of the father, the mother, everything. So, anybody got any questions about that? Does anybody think they could actually play Graham in that sort of way? I know you're all not old enough. Have you actually played Graham, have you? No, you couldn't. Well, for those of you who are interested, Woodford Players are actually putting on Talking Heads in June. So, and A Chip in the Sugar is one of the plays that's going on there, along with A Lady of Letters and Her Big Chance. So 3 monologues in one evening. I hope that's given you some kind of idea about how we develop a character. There's no right and wrong way of doing it, no right and wrong way of putting on a play. But it's about reading the script and trying to pull out those little bits of information that help you to develop a character. Graham wouldn't look anything like me, by the way. The reason I look like this is not because I look like this normally. I'm now in rehearsal for another play, Dick Barton's Special Agent, and I'm playing the evil Baron Scarheart. And that's the reason for the waxed moustache and the long hair. But it's just a hook to hang something on that enables me to become the character, if you like. It's about finding that little something in the character that you can take away and develop. And I'm sure that most of the people here could probably do it. All right? Thank you very much for your time.